common question that many people find themselves asking is, what do managers actually do? Truthfully, this is a fair question. If we intend to train and educate the next generation of managers, isn't it important to have an understanding of what we're training them for? These questions plagued the mind of a professor at McGill University by the name of Henry Mintzberg. You see, Mintzberg wasn't satisfied by Henry Fayol's depiction of managers as those that engage in planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. He felt that these functions were far too vague and weren't an accurate representation of what managers actually did on the job. So naturally, Mintzberg sought to uncover a more supportable and useful description of managerial work. In addition to conducting his own research, Mintzberg scoured current and available research pertaining to managerial roles. These studies incorporated managers at all levels of the organizational structure, as well as managers from different countries. Managers were observed firsthand in their natural environments, and some were even asked to keep detailed diaries of their various activities during the day. With access to all of this data, Mintzberg attempted to paint a much more accurate picture of managerial roles and accurately answer the question, what does a manager actually do? Mintzberg found that managers serve three distinct roles in the organization: interpersonal roles, informational roles, and decisional roles. Each of these categories spawned more specific responsibilities that ultimately share a common theme. But before we get to this, let's discuss where it all begins. What is a manager? Although definitions vary, a manager can easily be described as someone who's in charge of an organization or subgroup. And since the manager is in charge of the organization or subgroup, they're given a certain amount of authority over the group. Mintzberg argued that the presence of this authority was important because this formal authority, meaning authority derived from simply having a certain position in the organizational structure, results in the possession of status. And a manager's status in the organization is what leads to the various roles that we'll describe now. The first role of managers is an interpersonal role. Interpersonal roles are derived directly from formal authority, since managers wouldn't have the same relationship with his or her subordinates if he or she lacked formal authority and thus status in the group. Within interpersonal roles, managers fulfill three important roles: figurehead, leader, and liaison. As a figurehead, managers are the head of the organizational unit and are responsible for performing certain ceremonial duties. These duties can include taking a newly hired employee out to lunch, attending the wedding of an employee, or even meeting with foreign dignitaries. Although these may not sound critically important to the organization, they ensure the organization runs smoothly. The next role is that of a leader. As a leader, managers are accountable for the work and performance of their subordinates. Managers are often responsible for hiring and training in their direct area, and also providing subordinates with incentives to increase productivity while working towards group goals. The last interpersonal role is one of a liaison. As a liaison, managers serve as a connection between their organization or subunit to those outside of it. Acting as a liaison leads to managers establishing contacts with their peers as well as customers and suppliers, which can serve as a valuable source of information. Each of the individual roles within interpersonal roles leads to the second role of a manager: informational roles. Through their interpersonal roles, managers develop important contacts that provide them with access to important information. Within their informational role, managers serve as a monitor, disseminator, and spokesperson. At this point, I'm sure that you can see how these roles are beginning to tie together. For without the interpersonal roles, managers wouldn't be in a position to gain access to information in the first place. As a monitor, managers are responsible for scanning their environments for information. This information can come from a manager's vast collection of networks and can either be solicited or unsolicited. The important thing is that the manager has their ears to the ground and is waiting for valuable information to relay to his or her subordinates. Once the manager collects this information, they are now in a position to disseminate that information to their organization or subunit. This action highlights a manager's role as a disseminator. Without the manager, subordinates wouldn't have access to this information, since they likely lack the vast network of contacts that managers possess. The last informational role of a manager is that of a spokesperson. In addition to disseminating information to those inside the organization or subunit, managers also send information to people on the outside. This could take the form of a conference call with investors, a testimony at a congressional hearing, or even a conversation with a supplier. In addition to managing the interests of their subordinates, managers must also deal with external stakeholders, such as investors, suppliers, creditors, and government agencies, to name a few. Due to their informational roles, managers now have access to what is needed to make decisions. Managers play a significant role in the decision-making of their organization or subunit, and this is in large part due to the level of information that they have access to. Within a manager's role as a decision-maker, they also serve as an entrepreneur, disturbance handler, resource allocator, and negotiator. As an entrepreneur, managers seek to utilize their information for the purpose of improving their organization or subunit. Remember that while serving as monitor, the manager is scanning the environment for information and opportunities. As entrepreneur, the manager now takes advantage of those opportunities that were previously identified. As disturbance handler, managers are responsible for responding to events or circumstances that are beyond their control. These circumstances or pressures are typically too significant for a manager to ignore, and thus some kind of action is needed. These pressures can include deteriorating economic conditions, labor strikes, natural disasters, competitor actions, or even product issues like the Firestone tires in the 1990s, the deaths caused by Tylenol in the early 1980s, and more recently, the BP oil spill. The impact of these events is significant and certainly warrant a response from managers in their disturbance handler role. The third decisional role that managers engage in is that of a resource allocator. As resource allocator, managers decide who in their organization or subunit gets what. This can include things like time, which is important considering the manager's connections and access to information, money, equipment, or even facilities. In addition to allocating scarce resources, managers also establish an organizational structure for their unit and authorize decisions before implementation. The fourth and final decisional role is that of a negotiator. Due to their authority to commit organizational resources, as well as their access to information, managers are uniquely positioned to negotiate on behalf of the organization. Managers regularly negotiate supplier contracts, employee grievances, and employee labor contracts. Together, Mintzberg argued that each of these 10 managerial roles provide a better reflection of what managers actually do. Each role is uniquely important, and the sum of these managerial roles is certainly greater than the individual roles by themselves. Take, for example, a manager who doesn't have access to information. How would they make accurate and timely decisions? How would they allocate resources, negotiate effectively, or even identify new opportunities for their organization? The truth is that each managerial role is necessary and important to ultimately the effectiveness of a manager. Now, Mintzberg certainly didn't claim that every manager gives each role the same attention, but that access to each was important for a manager to be able to fulfill their roles and responsibilities effectively. This has been Mintzberg's managerial roles. In our next video, we'll discuss the early management theory, scientific management. For questions, please leave them in the comment box below, and I'll do my best to get back to those in a timely fashion. And remember to subscribe to Alanis Business Academy to have our latest videos sent to you while you sleep. Thanks for watching.